It is Thursday morning, the final Thursday morning in the month of May. We've made it, if you will. Sorry, it was a bad pun, but it was there. It's our town. It's brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust. I'm the host of the program. My name is Darren Swenson. A little later on in the program, we'll have our conversation with Gary Boden, Waukon City Manager. We actually had it last week, but logistically, it just worked out better to have that conversation on the air this week. So we'll see what's going on in the city of Waukon. We'll also be talking with Brecka Putnam. She is with Regional Health Services of Howard County. They will have a event at the Holmes Funeral Home next Tuesday night to discuss the issue of grief, an education event and a conversation event. Brecka will tell you all about that. But our first guest this morning, celebrating a athletic achievement from an area school. Mike Wenthold is the head boys golf coach at Southwind. Yesterday, they completed a second-place finish at the 1A boys state golf meet in Waterloo. Best ever finish for the Southwind boys golfers. And Mike will tell us all about the weekend and the season that was for Southwind boys golf. And that conversation happens now. We will tee off with our conversation with Mike Wenthold on Our Town. It's brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust right here on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. Chatting here with Southwind coach Mike Wenthold after a runner-up finish in the 1A boys state golf meet. Mike, what has made this a successful group? What has made this a fun group to be around?
You know what? As far as the success goes, we said it at the beginning. We've got probably one of the deepest teams in the state. We knew that from the outset. I always said that we were better as a state or better as a team than any individual was, and I think that showed all year long. The boys have worked tremendously hard over the last year, since the last time we were here, developing their games, developing their bodies, developing their mindsets, just learning how to play good golf, and it translated in a big way. We just talked as a whole group, and we talked about how this is who we've been this entire season. From the beginning of the season to the end of the season, we've been exactly who we are right now, a strong, deep team with capabilities of going low as individuals, but having 5 and 6 guys who we can rely on at any time to potentially post a good score in the team race.
And you talk about the mindset, the doing things right, and being focused all the time. What all goes into that? Because I'd imagine it's a lot easier said than done.
It is. One thing that we end up having to learn is that golf's a game of limiting mistakes and mitigating your mistakes. Making your way around the golf course, especially 18 holes on a day, can be incredibly challenging, can be incredibly taxing on your brain. Being able to find a way to get out of bad spots and mitigating damage is the important thing that the rest of us really struggle with. We always want to hit those big shots to satisfy our egos, but you got to put that aside in the game of golf if you're going to be really successful. And we've been able to instill that with the guys, and they've taken that to heart. And they can make those big shots when they need to, but when they can just get around the course and limit the damage, they do a nice job of that too.
And what you just touched on, how more important is that in the team concept of golf?
Yeah, as far as team goes, it's really important. We stress all the time that you don't really get to let yourself have a bad round. You have to continue to try and score, to try and scramble, even when things aren't going well, simply because we might be counting on you to be that 4th golfer or, maybe even 5th golfer in a tiebreaker if it comes to that. So every stroke matters a great deal. You don't really get to lose focus. And again, it's just been another strength, probably without a doubt the number one area of growth that we've seen in this squad is simply just being able to handle adverse situations a little bit better. We played in bad weather, bad conditions, tough greens, tough courses, and we've succeeded in all of them. And it's just with that incredible gritty mindset that the boys have.
And going with this tournament itself, you ended up number 2 after day number 1, and you were able to stay there. Would you say this was just a pretty consistent performance out of your team? Is that a fair adjective?
I'd love to say it's consistent, but I think it was even better than that. Okay. I would have signed up for a 325 again today, which we shot yesterday, and the boys played unbelievable golf. Carson leading the way with an even par 72, Kale Kleppe right behind with 74. We ended up shooting 313 as a squad today, which is our second best round of the season, over 18 holes. So to be able to put that together in the biggest round of the year was really something special. So I don't even know if I could say consistent, because it was better than that.
And what are you going to remember the most about these guys?
You know what? Last night we went out to eat and went to Applebee's and just had a really good time. Above all else, they were fun kids, likable kids, nice kids. We got lots of compliments from other coaches about how guys like to play with our kids. We got compliments from people at the hotel about how they were well-mannered. You know, those are the kinds of kids that we have. The golf is great, but it's really something special to be able to spend as much time as we have with kids that you like and kids that you love.
All right, congrats on a great season and a great accomplishments. Always fun to hang those banners, isn't it?
You betcha. Thanks.
Mike Wenthold, Southwind Boys Golfers, finished second in the 1A Boys Golf Tournament. Having a conversation right now with Brecka Putnam. She is with Regional Health Services of Howard County. She's a certified grief support specialist, and we're going to focus on a event that you're going to have coming up next Tuesday night at the Holmes Funeral Home in Decorah. Brecka, tell us about that event.
Absolutely. So we're really excited to partner with Helms to host quarterly conversation and community events where we talk about grief. It's something that nobody really likes to talk about, but it's really important that we do that because it can help people work through it. And when we work through it together, people tend to do better with their grieving.
How important is it to just have that conversation and just get people to the point of being comfortable with having that conversation?
Yeah, I think that it's incredibly important. We know that in other cultures, people are more open to talking about it, and it makes it a lot easier. So we've selected a series of topics that are sort of pertinent. This time we'll be talking about making meaning and finding hope. And so it's something that would be appropriate for anyone who's missing someone important to them. And we'll talk about how engaging in certain types of activities can help us cope with our grief in a more helpful way.
And it says, as part of the release that you sent out, join us for education and conversation. We've talked about the importance of having conversation. What can a person learn by going to the event next Tuesday night?
Sure. So a lot of what we do is normalize what people are already feeling. We can provide a little bit of brain science that helps to explain what's going on, and also helps people feel like they're not alone or they're not going crazy, right? Because it's letting people know that what's going on in their head is normal and common when somebody is grieving. We'll talk about different ways to helpfully grieve. How do we make meaning of the death of someone really important to us? And how do we do things that might help us work through that?
And grief is probably one of the loneliest emotions out there. How important is it to realize you don't have to deal with it alone?
It is so incredibly important. We find that working through grief in groups, whether it's a continued support group that meets regularly or whether it's an opportunity like this where you come out and you can join us for 45 minutes of education and then 45 minutes of conversation with a group one time, both of those are really helpful ways to process grief. And then, of course, with this series, we have two more coming up after this one. So if folks come and have a great time, they can come to other ones, or if they can't come to this one, the same concept. So it's not something where you would have to attend one to get some value out of the other ones.
Who do you recommend attend an event like next Tuesday night?
Yeah, so this one is really adults that are 18 and older who are missing someone special. And sometimes that's someone who's died recently, and sometimes it's someone who's died a long time ago. Anyone who feels like they're still kind of working through that loss. We've certainly had our hospice families and patients in the area identify a need for a program like this, but we've also been approached by families that have had nothing to do with our hospice services. Maybe there's been a sudden trauma or even the death of a child, and those individuals are welcome and would benefit as well.
Is there any sign-up cost, registration, etc., or is it a case of just showing up?
Just showing up. Folks are welcome to reach out to me if they have any questions or want to let us know that they're coming, but they certainly don't have to. We'll accept anyone who walks in the door.
And coming up next month in July, on July the 8th, you have a couple of more programs going on. Tell us about those.
Yeah, we have two exciting programs coming up on July 8th, and those will be over here in Cresco at Regional. And the first one is Fraud Fighters, and it's something that we're working on with the Northeast Iowa RSVP program, so out of the library there in Decorah. And we've got Roger Hinker, a retired banker that a lot of us know and love, will be coming to discuss various frauds and scams that are out there and how people can protect themselves. And then he's enlisting the help of law enforcement and technology experts. So it should be just a pretty robust collection of people who will be able to speak about it really well.
And then that same day, you have QPR suicide prevention training. Who is that program earmarked towards?
Yeah, that's a great question. So anyone who wants to be able to help a loved one and stop a death by suicide. So just like we try to educate lots of folks on CPR, because we know that the more people who know CPR, the more likely there will be someone available to do it if someone has cardiac arrest. The more people who know QPR, the more likely is that someone who is having suicidal thoughts will be near someone who is capable of helping them through it. And we certainly don't expect them to be able to do all the steps, just like we wouldn't expect a layperson to put someone on a ventilator. They're just there to work through the crisis a little bit and get them to that next level of help.
Anything we're missing? Anything else you want to pass on regarding these programs or any other services that you provide?
Just that we're so excited to be able to offer these resources to the community. And I hope that if folks have questions, they reach out, because we would love to see these programs fill up.
Brecka Putnam from Regional Health Services of Howard County, thank you for your time and your information.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Brecka Putnam, Regional Health Services of Howard County, Conversation and Community at Grief Series next Tuesday night from 6 until 7:30 at the Helms Funeral Home in Decorah. Time now for our monthly conversation with the city manager of Waukon, Gary Boden. And Gary, I know we've talked property taxes a lot on this program. The Iowa legislative session ended last week with no property tax reform. In the short term, is that a good thing? Are there any concerns in the long term related to that issue?
I have concerns short term and long term, because the existing law that was put into place here a couple of years ago is still effective. And the problem that we have there is that there still is a situation where we'll see some reductions in our ability to generate property taxes based on the tax base. I think we're going to be okay for this year, the year that we have upcoming with the budget that we have now. But a year from now, when we start seeing a growth in our tax base based upon new construction, as it stands right now, that new construction does not count positively as far as our ability to spread the taxes out, if you will. And how that
why
impacts,
is that? Can you break that down for us?
Well, when we have, like let's say the apartment complex, when it is done, then it will be brought online as a building, a structure, a property that will have a lot more value than what it did before it was an empty piece of ground. And with that expansion of the tax base, then you can actually see a spreading out, if you will, of costs onto more property. Well, the law as it stands right now doesn't allow for that to happen. That is a growth in your tax base that this state is trying to throttle back. Now, I understand the reason for that is that we've had revaluations as far as existing structures are concerned, and those existing structures saw significant increases and are seeing significant increases in valuation without any change in the environment. Well, that makes sense for existing construction, but new construction, that is also counting against us from the standpoint of how the property tax base is calculated. And as a result, we lose credit for that, if you will. And it's a disincentive, if you will, for developing. And that disincentive is contrary to what cities are all about. We like to thrive. We like to grow. It's a good business. I mean, anybody who's in business wants to see growth in their revenues. And this is growth in revenues that doesn't affect the existing taxpayer. It just affects the new taxpayers that have come on board with new construction.
If you had your withers on what changes need to be made in the state property tax structure and system, if you were allowed to do so, what would be the changes that you would make?
Well, I think first of all, we'd correct this whole business about a new property tax or new construction being brought onto the tax base. I would definitely just allow that to happen naturally. With growth also, you have to recognize that if you really are growing, and we're talking about as far as Waukon is concerned, just an incremental growth. But if you're really growing fast, you have to recognize that you probably have to have expansions of services. More people, more police, more people, more fire equipment, more people, more other kinds of services. Not that you're creating new services, but you're just expanding the services to meet the population that's growing. In our particular case, we're not doing that. And it's the growth that we're talking about is not that significant. Realize that Waukon probably in the mid 1990s peaked out at about 4,300 people. And now we're down to 3,700, which means that we're having a contracting tax base. Part of it is due to the fact that we are probably tearing down as many houses as we're building right now, not counting the apartment complexes or the duplexes now that we're building likewise. So our tax base is not expanding. Fewer people means that there's lesser commercial opportunities. We've seen a surge in our commercial base, mainly because there's been a lot of things that we're doing to try and improve our commercial districts. But at the same time, while all of these taxes have been modified, the amount of taxation that goes on apartment buildings has changed from a commercial status to a residential status. The amount of taxation on commercial buildings and industrial buildings has been lowered by state law, and that hasn't happened just recently. That's been occurring over the last 10 years. So our tax base actually is not growing as much as people might think, because if they just look at their own household assessments, yeah, they're going up. Other portions of our tax base is not. And as a result, it's shifting more of the burden onto the residences. So if we talk about it philosophically, I would like to see that shift onto residential properties lessened. That means that, you know, if we look at property taxes from the standpoint of you know, the industries and businesses, oh, they add to our economy and they help everybody in their economy. Well, the economy is also made up of the people who do the working and do the buying in the economy. And as a result, there needs to be some reevaluation of the relationship between consumers and producers. I think one other thing that we need to recognize, though, is that if we have significant increases in property tax base, in other words, if we have revaluations occurring that raises your taxes, there needs to be a modifier. And I recognize the state is doing that. They have a very convoluted system, though, that nobody understands, inclusive of the state legislators. But I think the thing about it is that I don't have a problem with the idea that we need to not let the tax base determine the property taxation. If in fact we really have a problem with property taxes, then if that's really the case, then what we need to do is shift what we collect in property taxes as opposed to what we collect in other kinds of taxes. We have a sales tax. I know that, for instance, property taxes in the state of Tennessee is almost non-existent. But in urbanized areas of Tennessee, they have 11 or 12% sales tax. Is that the right solution? I don't know. But I mean, I think that there needs to be a complete understanding about what taxation is, what it is, and what it's being spent on and what it's targeted for. And if in fact we need to have that conversation about taxation as opposed to just property taxation, then that needs to be done.
As of this time, when you talk about this big picture conversation of taxation, is it? I think most people that want to change taxation want to do it overnight, and they just can't. It has to be probably a 5, 10 year thing if you want to massively change the taxation conversation and what it's spent on and everything you just alluded to. I think just from the outside looking in, seemingly it needs to change over the course of 5 to 10 years and not overnight. But the demand from the politicals seems to be the change must happen overnight. Is that a fair assessment in your mind?
I think so. I think one of the things that one of the reasons why this new 2.0, if you will, tax reform didn't happen is that there was a heightened sensitivity, and it wasn't just from cities. To be honest with you, school districts are probably even more concerned about property taxation than cities or counties are concerned. Although cities have a completely different reason for concerns about property taxes because we're the ones that build the tax base. We don't do tricky social welfare programming and stuff like that. I mean, ours is very nuts and bolts. We built, we maintain, we try to develop, and as a result, our need for taxation is different than others. But that being said, dealing with school financing, maybe it should be done completely segregated from the rest of what we do for instance, for property taxation. I think that there is significant issues with school financing that really complicate this issue. And in fact, I think that the issues related to school financing are probably one of the reasons why this is held up even more so than what happens with cities. But cities do have a significant marker in this game. And that is really based, again, upon the idea that we're the government that actually goes out and tries to develop tax base and to diversify the tax base and to provide more resources through this development. If we are throttled, if we're held back from doing that, then our ability to provide what would be considered, at least from a city standpoint, essential services, is hampered. I mean, fire trucks still cost. Mm-hmm. And fire trucks keep going up in cost a lot more than what the cost of living is. And if we don't recognize those kinds of things, I mean, stuff does cost. And I know that people think, oh my goodness gracious, we're just, the governments are just sucking away all this money. Well, that's a stereotype that could be perhaps ascribed to different governments. I don't think it can do it with cities per se. But if you look at what's going on as far as, at the state and federal level, I mean, the state government went through major renovation, a cutback, a contraction in Iowa. And I think that was appropriate. We don't have that kind of, particularly in a small town, we don't have that kind of latitude. We're not that sophisticated. And besides, we don't have that many people, mm-hmm. both as a population and as a government.
All right, on to another subject. The council voted last night to move forward regarding a comprehensive plan update. First question is just explain for ignorant people like myself, what is a comprehensive plan and why is it necessary?
Well, a little background here. We do comprehensive plans every 10, 15 years. The last one was done in 2015. The one before that, I think, was in 1998. Things have changed a lot since 2015. We've seen a lot of growth. Our development has particularly in the last 5 years, has gone through expansion, and as a result, it is now creating. I don't think they're problems, but creating issues that need to be addressed as to how we are going to grow in a cost-effective manner and where we're going to grow, and for what types of things that we're going to focus on that growth. Prior to, the last 5, 6, 7 years, we really didn't do a whole lot. And one could conjecture that maybe we didn't need to do a comprehensive plan update, if you will, as recent as a 10-year time frame. But now things are changing here. And as a result, we need to think a little bit more forward as to how we're going to develop and for what matters we are going to develop. And we've done some planning, and we've done some community in data gathering and things of that sort, so that we could start doing portions of a plan related to Parks and Rec and related to some transportation nodes and stuff like that. But we need to be a little bit more comprehensive in that, consolidate some of that planning work that's been done here in the last few years, but then put it in an all-encompassing comprehensive plan that really talks about where we're going to develop and how we're going to develop. Our plans in the past have been probably too general to deal with some of the issues that we're going to be dealing with in the future, assuming that we have a growth mode going on here, and I think we do. We're going to have to be more deliberate in determining where we're going to site development based upon topography, based upon transportation needs, based upon accessibility to utilities. We kind of didn't do that in the past, mainly because there wasn't high pressure to do that. But now I think we have to be cognizant of where we're going to develop and how much cost is going to be involved. Because if we're talking about residential, there seems to be, in this economy, no way that you can do any significant residential without private or public sector participation. So we have a vested interest in this, not just from the standpoint of where we're going to put a subdivision, but how much it's going to cost to put that subdivision, because ultimately the city is going to be involved with some of that cost.
And I know the council has contracted with Upper Explorer Land to do a lot of the work, but as was discussed at the council meeting last night, you've done a lot of that work already based on what you're just telling me.
Well, there's been some of that has been done. I think that there's concepts here. Part of what's being done is that we need to actually be a little bit more codified, have it a little bit more codified, and simultaneously communicate what we're talking about as our planning and our vision for the future to the rest of the public. We really haven't done that.
Okay.
I mean, for somebody like me who's been doing a lot of development work and planning work all my career, I can see, well, this kind of makes sense over here. Now, I'm not the be all and end all. There might be some other ideas that I haven't thought of and other people have. And vice versa. There might be things that people haven't thought about that I have. And I mean, I'm the de facto city planner here, but there are a lot of people that do this work, inclusive of Michelle Barnes from UERPC, who does this kind of work. And we need to have not just a plan in place, but we need to have it accepted by the public and simultaneously take input from the local folks to say, well, this is what we would like to see, and this is what we think we need. There's been no incentive really to make a lot of this happen in the past, because we really haven't had much growth going on. But now I think there are people here that recognize that there is some potential. And if we do have some growth here, we want to have good growth, quality of development. We want to have the kinds of housing needs that we think need to be addressed. We need to have commercial involvement. We need to have a place or two where we could truly identify where we could see some industrial expansion. But all of those things require a lot of input and a lot of data gathering, and most specifically, communication to the people that live in this community.
You mentioned what's on the book regarding a comprehensive plan right now is probably a little too general for the city. When developing a plan like this, how specific do you want to get? How do you make sure that you don't get so narrow that you limit your growth based on what you put in that updated plan?
Well, I think that's part of what the we're cognizant of those concerns. I think we know that we need to lay out places where arterial roads are going to be, streets. I mean, we've developed 8th Avenue Southwest, past the new car dealership and over to 2nd Street where the apartments are being built. I think one can reasonably recognize that 8th Avenue is not going to stop at 2nd Street, but it could continue on farther to the west, over to 9th Street. I mean, one of the things that you do when you look at established arterials is linking them with other minor arterials. 2nd Street's the only street that we have in town that goes way from the far north end of town all the way down to the south end, other than 9th Street, or rather 9th Street and Rossville, Road Spring, El McKee. So those 3 north-south laterals make sense. We have Main Street goes all the way across. 3rd Avenue goes all the way across from the east side of town to 9th Street. But now this 8th is opening up, and we can probably anticipate that most of the growth that we'll see in our community will be toward the south. And as a result, you're going to need some cross arterials to link up with the north-south ones that we already have established. So when we do that, we also have to be cognizant of where water and sewer mains are going to go, where we have to do stormwater detention, where we know that if we were to build lift stations, which cost also, where we would place them and why we would place them. We have, again, look at the topography to determine where we could get the best bang for the buck on, particularly as it relates to sanitary sewer, the gravity flow, so that we don't have to pump this stuff. So there's a lot of, if you will, there'll be civil engineering involved with this planning effort. And I think that those are the kinds of things that we haven't done in the past. But again, I think it's because we haven't had we've been in kind of an inertia for growth to begin with. I mean, the last time that we had any significant private sector development as far as housing concerned was over 30 years ago. But that's changing. And we've had one significant development since then, which was actually done by the Waukon Economic Development Corporation. It's kind of a private-public partnership to begin with. But that's the only subdivision as far as single family is concerned that's really been done in 30 years.
And it's being the fact that it's changing and moving in the right direction, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah. But then also realize that we have no more single family lots for all intents and purposes. We have no place to build a single family house. Now, how we define a single family house might be changing also with the markets too. I mean, we might be talking about smaller lots. We might be talking about smaller buildings. I don't know. But those are the kinds of discussions that we have to have with the public as to what is reasonable, what can be done, and simultaneously what to expect.
All right, that's what's covered in my notebook. Anything else you want to pass on, as long as you got the forum this morning, Gary?
No, actually, summer activities are going to start in our park. Music in the park is going to start a week from Thursday. So we're just looking forward to the warm weather and school being out and the swimming pool opening up.
as we have this conversation on a rainy 53-degree day. I like your optimism, sir.
Well, it's May.
And if you don't like the weather, wait about 5 minutes. Everything will be good. Gary, appreciate the time and the information as always. Thank you.
Okay, Darren. Nice seeing you.
Gary Boden, City Manager of Waukon.
Hey, thank you to our guest on the program. Congratulations to Mike Wenthold and the Southwind Boys Golf Team. Second place finish at the 1A State Boys Golf Meet that concluded yesterday in Waterloo. I want to thank Brecka Putnam from Regional Health Services of Howard County, a grief event which will be held at the Helms Funeral Home in Decorah next Tuesday night, and that will be from 6 until 7:30. And we also want to thank Gary Boden, City Manager of Waukon, for joining us as well. Don't forget, we put the shows on YouTube every week. We realize it's summer. You're going to be busy. You're taking the kids this way, that way, every which way but loose. You're going on vacation. You got to get to ball games. You got to get to county fairs, fall festivals, not fall festivals yet, community festivals this summer. Sorry for getting ahead of myself in that situation. And let's see. What else is going on? Everything. It's summer. We're supposed to be busy. We're supposed to be outside. We're supposed to be having fun. But we get to talk to interesting people about interesting things. And we know you always can't be near a radio at 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning. We want to bring these to you on your schedule. Go to YouTube. 5-29 Our Town program is the way you can get this program. We also put it up on all of our LA Communication Stations Facebook pages as well. We want to connect with you in the community because without you, none of this makes sense. So that's another way you can get Our Town each and every week. We thank our sponsor, Decorah Bank and Trust. We thank the guests on the program, and we thank you, that's right, you, for tuning in, for logging on, or for watching Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River.